Nobody cared. These idiots who have murdered my son had more rights than we did. People seem to think I may have moved on and I've got over Stephen's death. I haven't.
122 or 161?
122, man.
How long?
If we'd known that the bus was going to take so long, the 122 to come, we would have just jogged it. If straight ahead of me is 12 o'clock where Stephen's standing, then at 10 o'clock, I remember this group of white boys on the other side of the road shouting.
She ran!
And I just saw this guy strike a downward blow, which I thought was a weapon.
Come on, Steve! Come on, just keep running!
He wasn't running properly, he was running lopsided, and he kept saying to me, Dwayne, like, what's happened to me? What's happened to me?
Just keep running with me, Brad! Come on with me! No, Steve, man! Come on.
Stephen Lawrence was only 18 years old when he was violently attacked by a group of thugs because of the colour of his skin. This was in London, where he lived. It was 10:35 p.m. and Stephen was with his friend. They were just waiting for a bus. They were chatting about football, and then all of a sudden a group of attackers descended on them. It was a crime that changed the face of modern Britain. The initial investigation into Stephen's death, it was slow because of incompetence, racism in the police, and alleged corruption. Hello and welcome back to Crime, Mystery and Mayhem with Kate. If this is your first visit to my channel, hello, welcome. It is great to have you here. Here on my channel I talk about true crime stories. I find them interesting and I'm quite intrigued as to why some people do the horrible things that they do. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel because it would really help me in my attempts to grow my channel. I cannot do this without you. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about the senseless killing of 18-year-old Stephen Lawrence. Super sad story, this one. But first, as usual, there is a warning. Well, I say as usual now. It's a new thing. So there's a warning. Stephen was the victim of a hate crime, basically because of the colour of his skin. He was a man of colour, so these people decided that they would attack him. There's going to be a bit of talk about racism, corrupt in the police, and assault committed on people of colour. If this is something that may trigger you, please click out and come back with a different case. And with that, let's jump into today's story. Okay, so Stephen Lawrence was born in Greenwich District Hospital on the 13th of September 1974. His parents were Jamaican and they immigrated to the UK in 1960. His dad was a carpenter and his name was Neville, and his mum, she was Doreen, and she was a teacher. She helped special needs children. Wonderful parents. He had amazing parents. Stephen was brought up in Plumstead, which is in the southeast of London, and he had two younger siblings. So he's the oldest, like me, and there's always some responsibilities that come with being the older one, right? Any older kids here? Yep, lots of responsibilities. So his little brother was Stuart, and his little sister was Georgia. Oh, not Georgia, Georgina. Sorry guys, Georgina. Beautiful name. Stephen was a good kid and incredibly humble. He had a very loving and happy home life. He was also very clever. He was a very clever young man actually, and he had dreams that he was working towards. He had things he wanted to do. Like most teenagers, he juggled an active social life, his schoolwork, his family commitments, and he had a part-time job. He was the type of son we would all be lucky to have. His home life, oh, so full of love. His parents absolutely adored him. Brilliant parents. Like I said, Stephen was a very smart young man and he had ambitions. He wanted to use his talents for maths, art and design to become an architect. It was his lifelong goal at age 18. He also wanted to have a positive impact on his community, which I'm sure he would have if he were able to go on and live and succeed. This kid, he was going places until he wasn't, because of what happened on the fateful night that I'm going to be talking about. He was brilliant, but tragically, his dream of becoming an architect, it wouldn't come true, because there are people in this world who are sick in the head, honestly. Stephen was a young man of colour, and unfortunately there are individuals out there that are racist. I personally do not understand it. I don't understand it at all. There is a massive problem in the UK. No, wait, I'm going to stop there. There's a massive problem all over the world with racism. It's horrible. People think it's getting better. I don't think so. I've looked at the statistics. But it's not just racism towards blacks and whites. It's everything. Anybody is a target. It doesn't matter where you're from. Everyone's a target. So today's case is about racism in the UK. So I'll be talking about the UK. And racism in Britain, it's not an issue of just black and white. It's far, far more complicated than that. We all know we live in a world full of racism. Anyone who denies this, honestly, is deluded. It's just so horrible that there are still people out there who feel hate towards people just because the colour of their skin. Alright, moving on for a bit from that. So Stephen, he wasn't just a brain box. He was also excelling in running, competing for the local Cambridge Harriers Athletics Club, and appeared as an extra in Denzel Washington's film for Queen and Country. He was doing so much. He was very busy. I am sure his parents were so proud. He was just doing things, you know what I mean? Like, not just sitting around like some teenagers. I'm not talking about one I know upstairs. But yeah, he was amazing. He was doing it all, and he was thriving. Stephen was studying technology and physics at the Blackheath Bluecoat School and English language and literature at Warwick College. These studies were going to put him in the direction to be a successful architect. Then, April the 22nd, 1993, started out just like any other day. Stephen went to school. He went to the Blackheath Bluecoat School where he was studying technology and physics. Did his classes, and then after school he popped over to the shops, and then he went over to the bus stop and he jumped on a bus because he was heading over to his uncle's house. So his uncle, excuse me, that always happens. Oh my god, I'm one of those people. I get the whatever it is, phlegm or whatever stuck in my throat. It's horrible. Anyway, so he's heading over to his uncle's house in Grove Park. When he got to his uncle's, his friend Dwayne Brooks had met him there, and they hung out, they played some video games, and then they're looking at the time and it's like, oh my god, it's 10 o'clock. Time just went so fast, and it kind of slipped away on them, and that's when they were like, oh my god, it's late. And yeah, they kind of had to go. They need to be home. But, you know, they're having so much fun. They were playing their video game. I get that. I have a son. I have two sons, actually. But one is 13 this year, and he absolutely loves gaming. I get it. So Stephen and Dwayne, they realised the time, and that the 286 bus that they were meant to catch, it would get them home far too late. So they could now maybe decide to go either by the 161 or the 122 bus route. So they had a chat about it. They're like, all right, these are our options. They're sizing up their options. One bus stop is further, but that will get us home quicker, that kind of thing. And they opted for the Well Hall Road bus stop. They decided that was best. So it was a little bit further to walk to this bus stop. They headed off, and they arrived at the bus stop at 10:25 p.m. It was dark, obviously, 10:25 p.m, and they just want to get home. So they were sitting there, they're waiting, and Stephen, getting a little bit impatient, he's like, I'm just going to go up the road just to see if I can see this bus, like, where is it? So he goes up, he's looking, and he walked along Well Hall Road to the junction of Dixon Road, while Dwayne he kind of just stayed back a bit. He was still on Well Hall Road between Dixon Road and the roundabout with Rochester Way and Westthorne Avenue. I'm going to put a map together. I'm sure I can do it. If I don't put a map together, it's because it got too confusing, but I'm going to do my best. So that's when Dwayne, he saw 6 European teenagers crossing Rochester Way. The group was on the opposite side of the street near the area of the zebra crossing, and they were moving towards Dwayne. It was about 10:38 at this stage, and Dwayne, he calls out to Stephen. He's like, "Hey man, is the bus coming? Where is it?" That's when this group of 6 youths, they just started yelling. They were being racist. I'm not going to say what they were saying, but they said the N-word. They were being horrible. And they started moving across the road really quickly. They were making their way across the road towards Stephen. All of this happened really fast. Apparently, all of this happened between 15 and 20 seconds. I'm obviously doing it slower because I'm going through it step by step. So all 6 of these despicable individuals launched at Stephen. It was 1 against 6. This wasn't going to end well. Also, they were armed. So they got to Stephen, they launched at him, they forced him down on the ground, and then all of a sudden, Stephen gets stabbed twice. They stabbed him on the right side of his collarbone and on his left shoulder. But these were deep, and these were life-threatening injuries, because both stab wounds, they severed arteries before penetrating a lung. He had a partial collapsed lung, and he lost feeling in his right arm. Also, because of that lung, he was really struggling to breathe. His breathing was really constricted, and he was losing a lot of blood from 4 major blood vessels. Dwayne saw all of this happening, saw it all unfold, and he yells out to Stephen, "Run!" And they start running. Stephen gets up, and by this stage, this group of morons, they fled the scene and they disappeared down Dixon Road. So Stephen, he gets up and he starts running. He was bleeding heavily, really heavily. He's losing a lot of blood. He's struggling to breathe. And he runs 130 yards. But that's when he collapsed. He collapsed to the ground. He couldn't go on. I wouldn't be able to do that. I would have just laid where I got stabbed. This guy, he wanted to live. He had ran this distance with a collapsed lung. Dwayne, he ran off to go get some help, and an off-duty police officer stopped his car and put a blanket on Stephen. Dwayne managed to get to a phone and he called for an ambulance. They say that Stephen wasn't given any CPR or anything. He wasn't helped, and apparently a cop arrived and not an ambulance for like a while. But anyway, Stephen finally got taken to the hospital at about 11:05. Sadly, he was already dead. He hadn't been given help, and at only 18 years old, Stephen was murdered in an unprovoked racist attack. He didn't know his killers didn't know him. It was all for nothing. Neville and Doreen Lawrence, they wanted justice for their son. This is news no parent needs to hear. This is horrible. They wanted the people responsible for his death to be found and held accountable, just as any parent would. Their son was only 18, and he was brilliant. He was going places, and then these pricks just take his life. So in the weeks and the months that followed his death, the lack of progress in the investigation, and more specifically the lack of activity by investigating officers, was becoming more of a concern for the Lawrence family. They were slack. A distinct lack of urgency to find information and move the case forward was becoming apparent. They weren't working hard enough. In the days that followed Stephen's killing, several residents from the area came forward, and they provided names. They gave names. Also, someone had left an anonymous letter on a police car windscreen and also in a telephone box. These notes had the names of the teenagers. It had 5 names. Remember we said Dwayne said 6? Well, they just stick to the 5. The notes, they said that these people were responsible for Stephen's death. And at this point, it's 5. There were 6 teenagers involved, but it did take a while before that 6th person was, they figured it out. And by the time they could prosecute this person, years and years and years went on, and that person ended up dying. I'll get names and everything as we go. So the suspects, they were Gary Dobson, brothers Neil and Jamie Accourt, Luke Knight, and David Norris. In February 1999, officers investigating the handling of the initial inquiry revealed that a woman who had vital information, like she was a vital witness, she called the detectives like 3 times within a few days after this killing. But her calls were ignored, and for some stupid reason, these officers never got back to her. The officers in the beginning, they didn't handle the case very well at all. There was actually talk in the area that many police officers involved in this case were racist. So how is Stephen going to get any justice? Honestly, how is his family going to get justice if the officers involved are racist and there's talk of corruption in this police department? I really feel for Stephen's family, honestly. So 10 days after the murder, Nelson Mandela, we've all heard of Nelson Mandela, right? He visited London, and he actually met with Stephen Lawrence's family. A public statement from Nelson Mandela was made to the media stating that black lives were cheap in the UK, just like they were in South Africa, and that is so freaking sad. This admission caused huge publicity and focused the spotlight on the police and their investigations into the Stephen Lawrence case, and specifically the issue of race and the quality of their inquiries. Finally, arrests were made, and 2 of the 5 youths, Neil Accourt and Luke Knight, were charged with murder. However, the case against them was dropped. Yeah. So it also turned out that the 5 teenage suspects were previously involved in other attacks, other racist attacks. There were knife attacks in the area. They had a really bad reputation in town for attacking people of colour, and only 4 weeks before they killed Stephen, Gary Dobson and Neil Accourt racially verbally abused a young black man called Kevin London. Then they launched at him like they had done to Stephen, and they tried to stab him. But luckily for Kevin, he managed to get away, and he wasn't stabbed, and he reported this hate crime to the police. But the police, they were useless, and at the time, these attackers walked free. You're going to hear about these attackers constantly walking free until finally something happens, but they just walk and walk and walk. They're out there free to attack more people. Also, Jamie Accourt, Neil's brother, attacked and stabbed 2 other African teenagers. The first was a teenager called Darren Witham, who was attacked and stabbed in May of 1992, and then it was Darren Giles in 1994. So the second one, Darren Giles, he ended up having a heart attack after he was stabbed. It was so sad. There were other stabbings as well. This group of monsters who attacked and stabbed Gurdeep Bangal and Stacey Benefield, which both occurred in March 1993. So they're just going around there attacking people. Those 2 attacks were linked to Neil and Jamie Accourt, David Norris and Gary Dobson. These are just crimes that we know about. This group had a lot of hate inside them, and they would verbally just abuse people. They'd also physically abuse people. They're just going around like verbally and physically abusing people of colour. It's just stupid. They're horrible. Just because the other victims of theirs weren't stabbed, it doesn't make them any less important. These poor innocent people were just trying to go about their everyday lives, and then they get confronted by this hateful, despicable group. It's horrible. And the police were bloody useless. They had 3 prime suspects, which is great. So they had 3 prime suspects really quickly with help from the community, but for some reason, no arrests were made at that time. They let these thugs continue to roam about town and abuse whoever the heck they wanted to. It's horrible. It's disgusting. No one who had a darker skin than them was safe at all. These people, they just wanted to cause harm. It was a really horrible time for locals. It was really bad. People were scared. So the police, they've got these names. They had their addresses, but yet they're not doing anything. The police didn't go and investigate their houses for a while. It took them like just over a week from when Stephen died for them to go to these houses. They knew who the people were from way back. They were told like the next day. They had the information handed to them on a platter. Why weren't they acting quicker? Because they're racist. Why? But they should. There would have been cops in the police department that weren't racist, right? So why weren't they, acting quicker to bring Stephen's family justice? It just doesn't make sense to me. They're there to protect, right? That means you protect everyone. It's so sad. So basically just because Stephen was black, they're not gonna help? Come on, it's ridiculous. So this is what people are saying. Even today, people say that the police didn't seem to care that an innocent 18-year-old boy who had already achieved so much in his life wasn't cared about by officials. It is heartbreaking. Detective Superintendent Brian Whedon, the officer who had been leading this investigation from its 3rd day and who would ultimately lead the murder squad for 14 months, he tried to explain. He explained to the public in 1998 that part of the reason no arrests had taken place by the 4th day was that he had not known the law allowed arrest upon reasonable suspicion. Is he crazy? Is he for real? Even I know that. And I don't start my criminal law university classes until next week. Like, what? Is he for real? Sounds like he was maybe looking for excuses, because it's a basic point of criminal law. He was a detective superintendent. You can't tell me that he didn't know that he can go and arrest them. Like, he must have known his job. You can't tell me that he didn't know what he can and cannot do within the law. It was his job to know. I don't believe him. I do not believe him. So finally, after much push from the public and also Stephen's family, on May the 7th, 1993, the Court brothers, Neil and Jamie, and also Gary Dobson, were arrested for Stephen Lawrence's murder. And 3 days later, David Norris turned himself in. So the pressure was, he had the pressure on him, so he's like, okay, I'll just turn myself in instead of them coming to me. So he went to the police station, turned himself in. Then on the 3rd of June, 1993, Luke Knight was arrested. So finally they're doing something. They needed the push though. Neil Accourt and Luke Knight were charged with Stephen's death, but there's always a but. Their charges were dropped. Their charges were dropped on July the 29th, 1993, because apparently there wasn't enough sufficient evidence. And from what I've read, there was. So let me get this straight. They were given all the information that they needed in the beginning to make arrests. And they had 3 months to get sufficient evidence together to produce at court. That's enough time. But yet they clearly didn't do their jobs. It's infuriating. They must have been well aware of the risk that letting these thugs walk free would pose. That this was a risk to the community. They're just going to go out and hurt more people. And they did. They did. I'm just going to say it. If Stephen had been white, this case would have been dealt with so much faster, and the group, they would have been locked up. Like, so quick. It pisses me off. And I'm white. I know. It's just so sad. It really is. Sometimes I'm ashamed of my people, but then also, like, everyone's racist to everyone, right? So, I don't know. Stephen did not deserve this. This police department was shocking in the way they handled Stephen's case. And it's cases like these that make me so angry. Stephen's parents were stuck between a rock and a hard place. They knew the evidence was there. So why wasn't anything happening? That must have been so infuriating for those parents. They knew it was there, but nothing was happening. This poor family were fighting. They were fighting to get justice for their son. And with much push from Stephen's family, the police opened an internal review in August 1993. Took their bloody time. And on the 16th of April 1994, the Crown Prosecution Service said that they still didn't have sufficient evidence for murder charges against any of the group involved in Stephen's death. That's because the police, they weren't handing over the information to the Crown. Stephen's parents said that they believed at the time that new evidence had been found. So what's going on? What's going on? Racist pricks is what's going on. Why are the investigators making it so bloody difficult? It's ridiculous. Why would they be okay with allowing a group of killers to carry on living their lives out and about in the community? Serious. These people are thugs. They're horrible. Every day that they were free to roam the streets, more and more people were put at risk. And they risked going through what Stephen went through. In September 1994, the Lawrence family took the matter into their own hands and initiated a private prosecution against the initial 2 suspects and 3 others. So the 3 others were Jamie Accourt, Gary Dobson, and David Norris. And the initial 2, if you don't remember, they were Neil Accourt and Luke Knight. So, yeah, they're going to interview them, they're going to talk to them, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully something comes from it. The family were not entitled to get legal aid, and a fighting fund was established to pay to get the evidence analysed. So the money that was raised, it was used to go towards analysing the forensic evidence and the cost of tracing and re-interviewing witnesses. The family were represented by counsel Michael Mainsfield, Martin Surju, and Margot Boyle. No, not Boyle, Boy. These people were quite amazing, and they offered their services pro bono. That's really, really amazing, because lawyers are freaking expensive, I know. If you don't know what pro bono means, it means that they didn't ask for payment and took on the case completely free of charge. I know, amazing. But there's only so much that Stephen's family and their lawyers could do, because they're working with corrupt cops, racist cops. I'm not going to say all of them were like this, but a lot of them were. They could get all of the evidence, but remember, they are dealing with police officers and investigators that just don't give a damn. And sadly, that was made apparent when the charges against Jamie Accourt and David Norris were dropped, before trial even began, apparently for lack of evidence. In modern day Britain, when a young man has been killed for innocently waiting for a bus, the colour of his skin should have no bearing on the quality of the investigation into his case. But sadly, it appears that this was indeed what was happening. And it's really, really horrible. It's not just people being like, oh my God, they're racist, you know? They're actually racist. In 1995, a memorial plaque was set into the pavement at the spot where Stephen was killed. Like, that's sweet. That's lovely. But there's always a but. Some a-holes decided that they were going to vandalize it. And the plaque got vandalized on a few occasions. Like, they would try and clean it up, but then some dickhead would come along and vandalize it. These people are horrible. I just don't understand how anyone can do that. It's a remembrance for a talented young man who was brutally killed. Like, are they serious? What is wrong with some people? Honestly. Then on the 23rd of April 1996, the 3 remaining suspects were acquitted. I know. They were acquitted of murder by a jury at the Central Criminal Court after the trial judge ruled that the identification evidence given by Dwayne Brooks was unreliable. He was there and he saw them. Come on. Is anyone else feeling enraged at the moment? Like, I know I'm talking calmly, but that's because I had chamomile tea. I needed it before I discussed this case, honestly. I'm trying to be calm for this case because I get myself all wound up with this kind of thing. So I drank a couple of cups of chamomile tea. Then, in February 1997, 4 years after Stephen was killed, an inquest into his death was held. And the 5 suspects refused to answer any of the questions that they were asked. They claimed privilege against self-incrimination. I know. Terrible. The inquest concluded on the 13th of February 1997 with the jury returning a verdict after only 30 minutes. So the jury agreed that it was an unlawful killing in a completely unprovoked racist attack by these individuals. Awesome. This finding went beyond the bounds of their instructions. Finally, we are getting somewhere. And on the 14th of February 1997, the Daily Mail newspaper labelled all of the suspects. They put it in the newspaper. It was on the front page. I'm going to put a picture up if I haven't already. So the headline, it says murderers. And they accuse these shitheads of killing. So the newspaper also said, if we are wrong, let them sue us. Yeah, they never sued them. They never sued them. Underneath this headline appeared pictures of these 5 suspects: Luke Knight, David Norris, Neil and Jamie Accord, and also Gary Dobson. Disgusting individuals. None of the men ever sued for defamation, and strong public opinions rose against the accused and the police who handled the case. People were not impressed. People were finding out that, you know, this is going on in the background. They were figuring it out. They knew it was in the newspaper, and, you know, people are talking. In July 1997, an inquiry was ordered by the Home Secretary to identify matters related to Stephen's killing, known as the McPherson report, which was completed in February 1999. So this report investigated the failings of the Metropolitan Police and the racist attitudes amongst its officers. At the inquiry, the public were outraged and they were angry, they were pissed off, they were angry, and they wanted Stephen's killers to be behind bars. An understanding and a belief that those involved in his death had not been investigated properly, nor had the police taken the case seriously enough from the outset, had fueled anger. People were mad. These horrible individuals, they even got stuff biffed at them by people in the public, from public, you know, that were at the court outside. The nation saw past the colour of the victim's skin and saw a young, innocent teenager killed and his killers escaping justice. Leaving the public inquiry into Stephen's death, the 5 suspects, arrogant throughout proceedings, required police to escort them from the Old Bailey as the public shouted and threw things at them. Like, they were just biffing stuff at them. In 1998, an annual architectural award called the Stephen Lawrence Prize was established by the Marco Goldschmied Foundation in association with the Royal Institute of British Architects in Stephen's memory. That is honestly so freaking sweet. That is so sweet. That I am so pleased that Stephen was being recognized, and not just because he died and he was young, but because he was so amazing and he was doing so much and he was going to go places until this group came along and ruined everything. So his mum, Doreen, she said, "I would like Stephen to be remembered as a young man who had a future. He was well loved, and he had been given a chance to survive, maybe he would have been the one to bridge the gap between black and white, because he didn't distinguish between black or white. He saw people as people, and that is exactly how we all should be. Seriously. I feel the same as Stephen did. I also see people as people, and it's heartbreaking what happened to him. I can only imagine where he would be today. He would most likely have succeeded. I highly believe that he would have succeeded. He would be living the life. He would be an architect right now. He would be doing so well. I have no doubt about that. But these monsters, they took it all away. In 2002, David Norris and Neil Accourt were convicted and jailed for racially aggravated harassment after an incident that involved a police officer. So this police officer was actually off duty. They didn't know that it was a cop until they were told this is a cop. He's like, idiots. So this officer, he was a man of colour, obviously, because they only go after people of colour because they're sick. They're stupid idiots. Yeah, so they attacked an undercover cop. Well, not undercover, a off-duty cop. Stupid idiots. In 2000 and law, oh my god, I keep thinking about law because I'm going to be doing my law, I'm going to be studying law. Anyway, in 2005, the law was changed. As part of the findings on the Lawrence case, the Macpherson report had recommended that the rule against double jeopardy should be repealed in murder cases, and that it should be possible to subject an acquitted murder suspect to a second trial if fresh and viable new evidence later came to light, which I completely agree with. I don't like that double jeopardy thing. So the Law Commission later added its support to this in its report, Double Jeopardy and Prosecution Appeals, in 2001. Fantastic. So a parallel report into the criminal justice system by Lord Justice Auld, a former senior presiding judge for England and Wales, had also commenced in 1999 and was published as the Auld report 6 months after the Law Commission report. It so that the Law Commission had unduly cautions by limiting the scope to murder, and that the exceptions should extend to other grave offences punishable with life and or long terms of imprisonment as Parliament might specify. So these recommendations were implemented within the Criminal Justice Act 2003, and this provision came into force in April 2005. So they're making changes to the law to help people, which is great. That's great, because this is, this isn't the police. These are the, these are the people in the big seats, So these people they're making good choices. It opened murder and certain other serious crimes, including manslaughter, kidnapping, rape, armed armed robbery, and some drug crimes to a second prosecution regardless of when committed, with two conditions. The retrial must be approved by the Director of Public Prosecutions, and the Court of Appeal must agree to quash the original acquittal because of new and compelling evidence. Makes sense, right? On the 27th of July 2006, the Daily Mail repeated its now famous front page post, the murderers. Yeah, they did it again. In July 2010, The Independent described the Lawrence killing. despite it having happened more than 17 years prior, as one of the highest profile unsolved racially motivated murders, because it was still, like, this case was still going. In June 2006, a cold case review commenced involving a full re-examination of forensic evidence. Initially, this was held in secrecy and it wasn't publicized. I don't know why. However, in November 2007, police confirmed they were investigating new scientific evidence. So they're starting to look into it. Fantastic. Bit late, but come on. Oh, yeah. At least they're looking into it. Took their time. The re-examination was led by forensic scientist Angela Gallup. I actually have a recording from Angela that I'll play now. So here we go.
Within a few months of starting, it became apparent that the scientific team had found some fibres that could have come from Stephen Lawrence's polo shirt. And so we were quite interested in that. With fibres, though, it sort of comes gradually, and it's the combination of different types of fibre which made, in this particular case, that made the evidence so strong. And we found some tiny flakes of blood. And one of these flakes had a couple of textile fibres passing through it, and these happened to match the fibres in Stephen's cardigan, which was very interesting. But in fact, the fibres were encased in the blood, so obviously the fibres had become entrapped when the blood was still wet, which was quite interesting.
So like Angela said, like, they got this really important new evidence. There was a microscopic stain of Lawrence's blood in Dobson's jacket. It had dried into the fibres, and its tiny size implied this had happened really quick. The forensic analysts concluded it had not been transferred there from elsewhere as dried blood, or perhaps later soaked into the fabric, but was deposited fresh and would have dried immediately. So they've got this tiny little drop of blood and fibres from Lawrence's clothing and hairs, with a 99.9% chance of coming from Stephen, found on Norris and Dobson's clothes from the time, or in the evidence bag holding them. So they've got this evidence. This is enough. This is enough. The police unit manager involved in the matter commented that the new evidence was only found because of scientific developments and developments in forensic approaches that had taken place since 1996, which allowed these microscopic blood stains and hair fragments to be analysed for DNA and other microscopic evidence to be found and used forensically. Absolutely awesome. Love science. Love science. It's awesome. On the 7th of February 2008, the Stephen Lawrence Centre, designed by architect David Ajay, opened in Deptford East, which is southeast London. A week later, I know, always something. It was vandalised in an attack that was initially believed to be racially motivated. However, that doubt was cast on assumption when CCTV evidence appeared to show one of the suspects was actually mixed race. So that whole racism thing was pushed out, and now they think, it's just people being dickheads. So the Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust is a national educational charity committed to the achievement of social justice. So they're really trying to help people. The trust provides educational and employability workshops and mentoring schemes. This is amazing. Stephen, he's doing stuff even after death. This is amazing. It also awards architectural and landscape bursaries. In 2008, the trust with architects RMJM created the initiative Architecture for Everyone to help promote architecture and the creative industries to young people from ethnic minorities. It's amazing. That is so freaking awesome. Stephen is doing things past, like, way later. It's awesome. So Gary Dobson and David Norris were arrested and charged without publicity on the 8th of September 2010, and on the 23rd of October 2010, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Keir Starmer, applied to the Court of Appeal for Dobson's original acquittal to be quashed. So Gary Dobson was in prison at the time, because he didn't change his ways. He'd done some drug dealing. He got picked up and put in jail. David Norris had not been previously acquitted, so no application was necessary in his case for legal reasons to protect the investigation and ensure a fair hearing. Reporting restrictions were put in place at the commencement of these proceedings. The arrests and subsequent developments were not reported at the time, so the media not allowed. I don't understand. What, are you trying to protect these thugs? Come on. I know they don't want people throwing shit at them, but maybe they deserve it. Gary Dobson's acquittal was quashed following a 2-day hearing on 11 and 12th of April 2011, enabling his retrial. On 18th of May 2011, the Court of Appeal handed down its judgment and the reporting restrictions were partially lifted. It was announced by the Crown Prosecution Services that the two would face trial for Stephen's death in light of new and substantial evidence. Yep, can't argue with science. The judgment of the court stated that, if reliable, the new scientific evidence would place Dobson in very close proximity, indeed, to Stephen Lawrence at the moment of and in the immediate aftermath of the attack. So he's like right there on him. Yep, exactly. So the ruling also emphasized that this was to be a new trial of a defendant who, we repeat, is presumed in law to be innocent. I know it's annoying when they say that, but yeah. And suggested a cautious and fact-based reporting style to avoid contempt of court or risk, of prejudice to the future trial. And jury was selected on the 14th of November 2011, and the trial, presided over by Mr. Justice Tracy, began the next day at the Central Criminal Court. So with the prosecution led by Mark Ellison, the case centred on the new forensic evidence and whether it demonstrated the defendant's involvement in the killing or was the result of later contamination. So that, they need to figure this out. On the 3rd of January 2012, after the jury had deliberated for just over 8 hours, Gary Dobson and David Norris found guilty for Stephen Lawrence's murder. Are we all crying with freaking joy? I know, that's only 2. So the 2 were sentenced on the 4th of January 2012 to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure, equivalent to a life sentence for an adult, with minimal terms of 15 years and 2 months for Gary Dobson and 14 years and 3 months for David Norris. Remember, they were kids when they committed these crimes, so they get less time. I know it's annoying. So time spent on remand by Gary Dobson was not deducted from his minimum term to ensure his existing sentence for drug-related offences was served. So the judge's sentencing remarks were later published in full online. Yep. So I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but the judge basically stated that the sentences reflected that Gary and David were juveniles at the time. So Gary was 17 and David was 16 at the time of when they killed Stephen, which took place before the Criminal Justice Act 2003. The starting point for the minimum term was therefore 12 years. The judge acknowledged this was lower than some would expect, yes, and it's annoying, but it's not the judge's fault. A similar crime committed in 2011 as an adult would have justified a minimum sentence of 30 years. I know it's annoying. So on the 30th of January 2012, it emerged that Norris and Dobson were seeking leave from the Court of Appeal to appeal against their convictions. I know. Are they freaking kidding me? On the 23rd of August 2012, it was reported that Norris and Dobson had lost the first round of their appeal. I'm just going to call them by their last names. I might say their first names sometimes. On the 15th of March 2013, it was announced that Gary Dobson had dropped his appeal against his murder conviction. In October 2012, Doreen Lawrence, Stephen's mum, she received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the 14th Pride of Britain Awards. She is amazing. Honestly, this woman is amazing. You guys need to read about her. Doreen Lawrence was elevated to the peerage as a baroness on the 6th of September 2013, and is formally styled Baroness Lawrence of Clarendon. I'm trying to say it. I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's amazing. It's such an honor for her. Like, that is amazing. That is so cool. She sits on the Labour benches in the House of Lords as a working peer specialising in race and diversity. She is so amazing. Honestly, Stephen had the coolest parents. Also, Stephen Lawrence Research Centre was built at De Montfort University, located inside the Hugh Aston building. I hope I never have to argue too much in court. I'm going to be a terrible lawyer. I keep on I can't talk. Yeah. So Stephen's mum, she was appointed Chancellor of the university in 2016. The centre hosted a series of special events for the 30th anniversary of Stephen's death in April 2023. People are making an effort to get his name out and to do things. On the 23rd of April 2018, at a memorial service to mark the 25th anniversary of his death, Prime Minister Theresa May announced that Stephen Lawrence Day would be an annual national commemoration of his death on the 22nd of April every year, starting in 2019. Doreen Lawrence made a statement that Stephen Lawrence Day would be an opportunity for young people to use their voices and should be embedded in their education and wider system regardless of the government of the day. On the 18th of May 2022, it was reported that David Norris's request to be moved to an open prison in advance of his possible release was denied. Good. For the year ending March 2021, hate crimes were recorded by police in England and Wales. This represents a 9% increase compared with the previous years. So the hate crime is actually going up. For the following year of March 2022, there was a 26% increase from the previous year. It's just so horrible. As well as over 155,000 hate crimes reported in England and Wales. Increases in hate crime were seen around certain triggering events. People get annoyed about everything. Like the EU referendum in June 2016, the 2017 Westminster terror attacks, and the widespread Black Lives Matter protests that were going on and far-right counter-protests. At the start of the coronavirus pandemic, hate crimes directed at both South and East Asian communities went up like real bad. People were blaming the Asians for coronavirus. I'm not even going to get into it. Not happening. So young men, particularly young black men, they're stereotyped. And people think, like, if they're just wearing a hoodie or whatever, that they're up to something. Maybe they're just cold. So past research shows that the media misrepresents the picture of crime and that stories involving violent and sexual offences are over-reported beyond the official statistics. So it makes it seem like, the publicity of Stephen Lawrence's case through the media and the relentless campaigning by his family was reaching all corners of the UK and the world, bringing the case into people's homes and into their minds, their thinking. They began to question the cultural attitudes present and the thought that such attitudes were interfering with the investigation of the death of an innocent 18-year-old. Never before had a case spread so wide, honestly. The full Macpherson report was published in 1999, highlighting 28 official failings within the investigation of Stephen's death. So I'll go through a couple of them. My God, I need to have some water. It's because I'm getting old, guys. So information, so they're saying that lost information and delayed information to the people who needed it. They lost opportunities, a lack of proper leadership, all of which had contributed to an inadequate investigation into the death of a teenage boy on the streets of London, relationships between senior officers and known gangsters involved with the case. Yeah, there's so much going on. Like, one of the suspect's fathers, he was actually brought into question because he was a gangster. And they reckon, like, his family, like, paid some money or something, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. I'm just going by what people have said. Don't come for me. So, crucially, the McPherson report said that the Metropolitan Police was instinctually racist and further recommended the double jeopardy rule, where an individual could not be tried again on the same or similar charges after an acquittal or a conviction. They wanted it removed. They wanted it removed from law in murder cases, which is fair enough because, you know, this is serious. This was a damaging blow to the Metropolitan Police, you know, being called out for being racist, and the issue of race came to the forefront, forcing attitudes to be confronted and changed. New definitions for a racist incident were called for, along with a change in practices to recognise and reflect the cultural demographics within London communities. It's multicultural, like New Zealand. It's a bit of everybody. Disciplinary consequences for racist behaviour from police officers were also to be implemented. The cops aren't allowed to get away with this shit anymore, and they were going to get punished. There are still incidences where cops do horrific shit to people, but there's a start. So for the first time, the British public saw a grieving black family as a grieving family. I know that sounds horrible, this is what they're saying. A family that had suffered an injustice and saw through the colour of their skin, one might say. They identified with Doreen and Neville, and they could see the injustice that had happened to them. The Stephen Lawrence case challenged the views of society and of the authorities entrusted to investigate such crimes. It is a case that will be remembered not only for the terrible crime that it was, but for the changes and impact it had on the police and the communities of the UK. Oh yeah, also, Doreen wrote a book. Yeah, Doreen wrote a book. So, what's the book called? It's called And Still I Rise. And it's her own story of, how she felt and who her son was. And in this raw, honest book, she writes about her life for the first time and recreates the pain, the frustration, and bafflement that she experienced as she realized that there would never be a moment she could say to herself that justice had been done. Yeah. So, wow, what a case. It is horrific what happened to Stephen. And it's so sad. Why can't we all just get along? Honestly, why can't we all just get along? I'm white as hell, but you don't see me running around being a dick. I just don't, when I'm talking to someone, I don't look at them and be like, man, you're Asian, or man, you're black, or man, you're white. I'm like, man, you're a person. Like, I just talk to people like they're like normal. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. It does, Kate. I just don't get it. I don't understand why people can dislike someone just because their color isn't the same as theirs. Like, I know there's people that, are racist towards white people as well, because I've actually experienced it. I went to school in South Auckland. I know. Oh, no, you guys probably don't know what South Auckland means, eh? All right, let's just say South Auckland, rough. It's rough. Yeah. I went to Manurewa High and I went to James Cook High, and it was a very, it was an experience. It was an experience. I still managed to finish school, thank God. But it was an experience. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I think I'll leave it at that. It was horrible. My brother, no, I'm not gonna leave it. I'm just gonna keep rambling because that's what I do. Okay, so my brother, he's 2 years young, 18 months younger than me, and I was in year 11. Yeah, I was in year 11 because we used to call it. What do we call it now? So how old was I? 16, 15 or 16, and my brother was 14. And some kid cornered him with a carving knife, you know what you use to do woodwork, the carving knives, and they put it to his eye. Yeah, so needless to say, we did not like that school, and that's why I went to another high school, because it was horrible. I went to 3 high schools. Yeah, oh, that's not good. But anyway, yeah. It happens everywhere, and it happens to anyone. It does. But what happened to Stephen is honestly horrific. Like, you don't deserve to lose your life just because you were born the color that you are. Like, is that freaking serious? Like, come on. Ooh, it pisses me off. Why can't everyone just get along? Alright, everyone be nice to people today and tomorrow and forever. Just be nice. Why are people so angry? I don't get it. This racism shit has been going on forever. Like, from day dot. It's not new. We only hear about it more because of the internet. It's everywhere. I think maybe people say that it's worse these days because we do hear about it so much, maybe. Because, you know, we've got internet, we've got TV. Back in the day, we didn't have that. I think that it's been the same throughout, you know, throughout the generations. I reckon it's been the same throughout. That's my opinion on that one. People being horrible to people. Okay, I'm going to leave it there today. I hope everyone is having a wonderful morning, day, night, whatever it is where you are. I have been talking for a little bit now, so I need to go and have some water because my lips are so dry and my throat is so dry because down in this basement it's like really dry, and I got these lights in my eyes. I'll show you my lights one day and then you'll understand why I'm always like squinting or yeah. Okay, I hope you guys are doing really well, and I'll talk to you later. Ka kite. See, I say ka kite. I'm not Māori, but I still say it because they're the people who, you know, were first in my country before the European settlers. So, you know, ka kite, respect. Kia ora. Bye.